Hey everybody, welcome to episode 12 of Fitness and Money Maximizing Your Health and Wealth. Today we're going to go over tricep extensions, sitting tricep extensions. So like we talked about in the first couple of episodes with triceps, there are three very distinctly different heads of the tricep. There is a long head, there is a lateral head, and there is a medial head. I probably didn't point that out well enough in the past two episodes, and I'll do that today after we do the exercise, because each exercise that we did previously and the one that we're going to do today is going to focus on each of those heads. Now, to some extent, some exercises kind of overlap, and some of them actually might hit two tricep heads or maybe even all three, but we want to make sure that we at least have one that focuses on a particular one of those three heads of the tricep. So today's exercise, we're going to do, as we always do, we're going to do wrong and then we're going to do it right. So what you'll need is we're going to grab the dumbbell like such, and we're going to place it over our head. Now, I would suggest not doing this. That's not going to work out for anybody. Let's go around the side and up. So again, to get this dumbbell or kettlebell in motion, we're going to want to come around the side just like this and bring it up to a position just like this. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to lean our body forward. We don't want to lean the body back like this. We want to have our torso very rigid as we're doing this exercise. And what we're going to do is we're simply going to drop the dumbbell down, and we're going to bring it back up, drop it back down, and bring it back up. So again, any movement, this would be incorrect, this would be incorrect, and we absolutely do not want to move our neck around when we're doing this. We don't want to be doing this, we don't want to be doing this, we don't want to be flaring out like this. That's what we don't want to do. So again, with these isolation movements, doing them correctly, which is going to be torso nice and firm, straight up, and simply drop the dumbbell back to a point where you're going to want to do it as low as you possibly can get it. It's going to end up somewhere in your cervical spine area. So I would say doing this is fine. Doing this, perhaps not. Go down as far as you can, get a good stretch, and you're going to end up working with this particular one. You're going to end up working mostly the long tricep head. So again, we'll do it right from the beginning. Your dumbbell's going to be on the floor. You're going to grab it. You're going to pick it up. You're going to get it into this position. We're not going to want to go overhead like this. That you're going to end up with a nice banged head, especially if you're using some weight that's relatively heavy. You're going to want a good way to get it into the correct position. So whether you're lefty, whether you're righty, this would be the way to do it. Start up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now, this one as well as the other ones, we want to make sure that we try to the best that we can not to lock our elbows out. So again, in the spirit of keeping that good positive stress on the muscles, every time you lock your elbows out, you take that good continual stress off of the muscle, and that's something we don't want to do. So again, down, as you can see, I'm not locking my elbows. Locking my elbows would be something like this. This is not what we want to do. We want to keep it kind of in this diamond pattern position, if you want to call it, and just, gently, lower it down as far as you possibly can, comfortably, and then bring it back up. So that's our third exercise for triceps. Next week, we're going to start biceps. And in order to have nice, shapely arms or larger arms, for those of you that might want a little bit more size, as opposed to the muscularity, definition, toning, most of us probably want some combination of both. We're going to work those biceps. We're going to do 3 separate exercises. They are going to be somewhat isolation movements, just like we had here for the triceps. And then at that point, we're going to probably move on to legs, or maybe we'll go through and do a complete movement of each of the 3 exercises for each body part. So maybe we'll take the back and we'll do all 3 exercises. We'll take an episode, do chest, do all 3 exercises together, and then shoulders, triceps, and biceps. And then we'll kind of put it together in a nice cohesive package. And again, you should start thinking, and I said this in one of my posts, you should start thinking about how much time you want to devote to this. We don't have unlimited time, and some of us, want to put more into it than others, and that's perfectly fine. You're going to want to kind of define, do I want to work out 3 days a week? Do I want to work out 4 days a week? At a maximum, 5 days a week. Those of us that want to work out 3 days a week, that's going to mean we're going to tailor the workout program differently than we would if we were working out 4 days a week or 5 days a week. So again, something to think about going forward. So in today's financial tip, I thought that we would talk about dividends. Now the reason I want to talk about dividends and how they relate to stocks and how they relate to mutual funds is because right now we're still in that inflationary environment, and when you're in that inflationary environment and possibly leading towards some type of recession, whether it's a mild recession, whether it's a medium hard landing, they might call it, nobody really knows. There's tons of prognosticators out there that will tell you, this is what's going to happen. This, to be quite honest with you, there's so many variables. Whether we have a recession or not, I don't think anybody knows it. But when we do, and growth expectations come down, that's usually when the dividend-paying stocks and mutual funds do well. And there's a reason for that. The companies that pay dividends, they have a good amount of cash on their balance sheets. They're flooded with cash. They're very well capitalized. They generally don't need to go borrow money to fund any of their capital expenditures or things like that, as opposed to startup companies or companies that we would call high flyer growth type companies. They don't pay dividends because they are reinvesting all of their profits into the business to expand. Now, during recessionary times and when interest rates are generally high, those companies do not do well. And that's been illustrated this year to a pretty large degree. Most of the technology companies out there that are startups, high flyers, they haven't done terribly well this year. The large technology companies that are very, very flush with cash, they've done well. Examples of those might be Google, Microsoft, Apple, and those are just 3. So the way that dividends work and why they're important in times when you want to get more defensive, when times are uncertain, is a company will pay out a dividend based on the amount of cash that they're going to throw off to investors. So if I own company A, let's say that they declare a $2 a share dividend. Okay, so they're going to pay me $2 for every share that I own of that company. So if I own 200 shares, I'm going to times that 200 shares that I own by $2. That ends up being $400. Dividends are normally paid out by most companies on a quarterly basis. So each quarter, you would see in your account 100, 100, 100, and $100 for each quarter. Now, what happens is those dividends can either go into, most likely, they will go into your cash account, which is the reserve account that you have perhaps with a broker or another financial institution that you're working with, but usually it's a broker. Or in some cases, you can reinvest those dividends in buying more shares of the stock. Most people, my experience is, most people, depending on your age, they will either take those dividends and they will put them in their cash account, either to buy additional shares of that stock or to buy additional shares of some other stock that they might have been watching. Now, people that are a little bit older and concerned about income, if you, depending on the size of your portfolio, if you have a number of dividend stocks or the majority of the stocks in your portfolio or dividend paying stocks, you could end up with $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 of cash each year just through dividends. And that would be called passive income. You haven't done anything. The company is going to pay you that dividend regardless of what the stock is doing. Now, I'm going to put a little bit kind of quotes around that. Companies can cut their dividends during tough times. There's no question they can do that, and that is something that you have to watch out for or pay attention to. But most of the big blue chip companies that are out there pay dividends, have continually paid dividends, and generally increase those dividends. Some of them are called dividend aristocrats. That means that they've increased their dividend over a very, very long period of time. So those are pretty safe bets in terms of paying out the dividends. So I would say that's a great source of passive income if you're getting toward retirement age. The other thing that you might want to keep in mind is there are certain companies that do stock buybacks. And buybacks and dividends kind of often get discussed in the same breath. Dividends, as we just discussed, are cash payments back to the shareholder based on how many shares of that stock that they have and whatever the dividend is that gets paid out per share. Now, a buyback is something, and we won't get into the weeds on this one. There's a lot of reasons companies do buybacks. And basically what that is the company is buying back their own shares of the company. Now, what happens is when a company buys back its shares on a regular basis, it's taking this large number of shares that are outstanding in total, and it's shrinking the amount of shares because they're buying shares back. So they're shrinking the amount of shares that are out there in the public, so to speak, to be bought, sold, whatnot. Sometimes that's called financial engineering. We won't necessarily get into that right now, but I'll give you one of the best examples of why a company would buy its shares back. Say that a great company, and I can pick any company. I can pick Apple, I could pick Google, I could pick Microsoft, I could pick some pharma stocks, Pfizer, Merck, Bristol Myers. Those are names that everybody pretty much recognizes. If the company thinks that their stock is undervalued. In other words, the stock market has taken down that stock for a reason that is not valid. Sometimes they call it throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's a term they use. It means that, if everybody's dumping technology companies, maybe they all get thrown out, even the good ones with the not so good ones. So a company might, the board of directors of a company might say, "Geez, we think our stock is undervalued. We're going to go out there and we're going to buy up those shares of stock at say $50 because they think that the true value, the intrinsic value of their stock might be 70. So they go in and they buy that stock back. That's good for shareholders because it means the company has a vested interest in buying those shares back at a low price, and shrinking those shares again improves their earnings per share, and that's getting in the weeds, and it is what they call financial engineering, and in a way that they can make their earnings per share look better by having a smaller amount of float or a smaller amount of shares out there. And that's not something that you necessarily have to understand, but the main takeaway is that when a company buys back shares for a good reason, they think their stock is undervalued, that's good. Dividends, more straightforward. That's cash that goes right into your cash account that you can either keep there, you can buy more shares of that same stock that pay the dividend, or you can reinvest that money into some other company, that you might have an interest in. So that's kind of a little bit of an explanation on dividends, and I think that dividends are important, and I think they're going to be more important going forward, again, because the economy is absolutely slowing down. There's no question about that. Inflation is being very sticky, they call it. It's coming down, but it's not coming down in certain areas that the Federal Reserve looks at. So we could be with higher rates for longer, and basically that's going to mean that true growth companies, startup companies that are reinvesting all of their capital in their business, they're gonna struggle a bit, because if they need to go to borrow money to finance future endeavors or whatnot, they're going to be obviously paying a higher interest rate than they normally would, and that affects some of their out year projections that they make for fiscal year 24, 25. And I find I'm getting in the weeds here a little bit. So why don't we wrap it there? Maybe we'll talk about dividends again. Main takeaway: dividends are good. Stock buybacks are good. I think they're going to be important going forward for all the reasons that I just said relative to where we are in the economy right now. So that's a wrap for today. Next week, we are going to get into biceps. And then at that point, we're going to be probably mixing it up. And then we're going to get moving to legs, and then we're going to put some real cohesive workouts together. And those of you that have stayed with me long enough, it's going to be very precise, and you're going to get the maximum amount of results in the least amount of time. Again, we want to work smarter, not necessarily harder, when it comes to fitness, finance, and we'll get into nutrition and other type things as well. So, hope you have a good day. If you like the videos, hit the like button. If you'd like to subscribe, that's great too. And until next time, have a good one.